Hello, we have returned, though now it is dark. Folks, I'm going to return now to a subject which I thought I'd covered in a previous video, but apparently I haven't. I must have deleted it. And it's to do with romantic partners and Asperger syndrome. And it'll be a lot of fun. And with deadpan delivery. And not too monotone. I'll try and perk it up as I go along. Referring partly from this book by Tony Attwood again. And I suppose romantic partners never been too hot in that department. Not yet. But try weird, girls, you know you want to. There's something in this book about adolescence and relationships, how the person with Asperger syndrome wants somebody who is loving and kind for a long-term partner. Now, I don't know if any of you remember being an adolescent, or can think of a number of, a large swathe, if not a majority, of virile young men who, perhaps as a first, if they're sane, probably isn't their priority to have a long-term relationship. I mean, maybe it's seen as, in the past it was seen as Christian and moral, but the contraceptive pill was available since 1968, along with a number of other contraceptive methods before and since, and it's not really how we live, is it? And I know some people point to that as a form of moral degradation in our society. Other people, of course, view that as rather useful at avoiding painful and unnecessary consequences, undesirable consequences. If you use contraception, you don't have to worry about abortion, you don't have to worry about having well, I perhaps almost hesitate to say it, but unwanted children and tensions that arise between people who are not really meant to be together for a long-term relationship. What else did we have before that? From prostitutes or less penetrative sex. Am I going on here on the right train? Oh yes, on the train as well, watch out there for extramarital sex. The comedy should probably subside. I was saying how those with Asperger's, I mean Asperger's in the genes, or Asperger's, and how what is considered to be innate, or perhaps not entirely innate, something you're just born with. There may be other factors, chemical, mutagenic, something affecting the developmental switches in a fetus or developing embryo, and hormones, etc. play a part. But there are similarities I noticed in this book by Attwood as between people, what a lot of people say about codependent and narcissist relationships. Where the codependent person is usually desperate, and it's romantic. It applies to platonic relationships too, friendships or between family members, where you're in a desperate state, and the only person you can rely on, perhaps because of finances, social status, lack of experience, lack of confidence, or a range of any of the above, and the first person you meet appears to be a godsend, but in fact they will often disappoint, or you will. It's not disappointment so much. You will lead a lesser life as a lesser self, a less realized, actualized self, and things like being insecure about your appearance, insecure about what you do, as say confidence, well, that seems to correspond a little bit to the description here of the woman more than the man, but whereas the man is somewhat naive. Well, that's another characteristic of codependence. It's almost like there's two codependents with Asperger people, maybe, but one sees a lot in the other. I should probably try and read a passage. It's funny that I think of my parents, but they are probably more narcissist than codependent, but there's a bit of Asperger's there too, I think. And the problem is they tend to excuse away everything with as if they have a little bit of Asperger's, whereas I'm the one who has to have it diagnosed, so I get to be the black sheep who gets to be abnormalized, the weakest link, and they get to be sort of, well, maybe something, but they don't have to be called out for it. So you see the hypocrisy. Asperger's couples. Many women describe their first impression of their partner, who at this stage may not have had a diagnosis, as someone who is kind, attentive, and slightly immature. Immature is also another characteristic of those with people pleaser syndrome, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, who are codependents of a sort. And you want to be all things to all people. Some people you can trust when you try and be like that. Some people you can't. Whether they have Asperger's or not, sometimes helps. They do have those sort of qualities. Other times, probably not, because anybody can have personality disorder traits. Not everybody is right for everybody, are they? But for various reasons. They slightly immature, the highly desirable, handsome and silent stranger. It's just sex with some people, isn't it? But that almost seems like histrionic traits, or very superficial sort of traits. Not really valuing someone because they make you feel safe necessarily, or because they make you feel glad about who you are. Well, they respect you for the person that you actually are. They treat you as an option. There's a meme out there, somebody treats you as an option. Well, it's don't bother with them, I can't quite remember the meme. It's so you see the parallels, the analogy I'm trying to make. Men with Asperger's syndrome can also be admired for speaking their mind, having a sense of social justice and strong moral convictions. There's a lot of people on the cluster B personality spectrum who seem to have strong views. Whether they have a strong sense of justice is an actual truth is another matter. The two could be confused. Look at all the protests that are on at the moment with the social justice warriors. The man with Asperger's syndrome is usually a late developer in terms of emotional and relationship maturity. Well, some of us have a few more problems to begin with, not necessarily because of that. But I can understand if you do have that, have Asperger's, it would be more difficult to be like everybody else. You're not like everybody else. The majority in that case. But I go back to this thing, who doesn't have Asperger's? This idea that the minority has to be wrong. It sounds like it is wrong. A wrong opinion. It's just too easy to blame a vulnerable minority, or to single them out and diagnose them, misdiagnose, overdiagnose the condition. When men with Asperger's syndrome are asked what was initially appealing about their partner, they often describe one physical quality such as hair or specific personality characteristics, especially being maternal in looking after or already having children or caring for injured animals. Men with Asperger syndrome are often less concerned about their partner's physique than other men, and also less concerned about age or cultural differences. Cultural differences, it's almost like you don't belong to a tribe anyway, so you might as well marry into another one. Not always recommended. Could perhaps store up more confusion in the future, or perhaps a great diplomat, who knows. Sayonara.